Hello, fellow Econauts, and welcome back to our show. I'm here with my brother Ben, the Rocket Man, and we talk about science, space, and economy. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey Simon, how's it going? Hey fellow Econauts. Hey Simon, what's the topic today?
Our topic today are analog missions, and my first question to you is what are analog missions?
Well, plain and simple, obviously we for to test any technology or any procedure, we can't send or it's would be very expensive to send people straight away to space. So in order to test certain aspects and certain systems, we rebuild sort of or simulate in an environment on Earth conditions we would find in space. So what I mean by that is, for example, if we build a space station or a space habitat on Earth, we would build it somewhere in the desert so that we can sort of simulate the conditions we would find on the moon or somewhere else.
And what kind of aspects are actually to be tested?
We have a number of different things we can test. For example, when we build something underwater, we can simulate uh, microgravity or no gravity environments. We could, for example, build, as I already mentioned before, a habitat in the desert. For example, here in Western Australia, where the dirt is red, even we could sort of build a habitat which resembles a Mars environment. For example, to test rover missions. In Laksha, that's a crater in India, there's a space habitat as well, and the remoteness is testing more or less, how far away you would be. There's not a lot of interference um, from electromagnetic signals and so on. So you could more or less send people in there, and they can live there for a couple months, and then you can test psychological aspects between how people react with each other. You can start testing when you want to grow something, and you can see if people can be self-sufficient. The big advantage, though, obviously, is there's a constant connection to a control room, and if anything would be in a life-threatening situation, people can interfere straight away.
You mentioned you mentioned the the aspect of growing food. Is that the reason why those habitats are put in the desert so that you basically have like no no proper soil available?
Well, you would so imagine you would simulate a habitat on Mars, then you would not even leave the habitat. So being in the
Exactly.
desert
That's
means
yeah,
more,
yeah, but
yeah,
if you sorry, but if you put even if you put a habitat on the ground, doesn't mean that also the floor is part of the habitat, right? So
yeah,
the
the whole thing is sealed, completely hermetically sealed. There's no connection to the environment at all.
okay,
So it's a sort of a petri dish. You might bring soil from the outside in, but in order to go out, you would even have to wear a suit, for example, right? And
gotcha.
then you could bring something in. And yes, in the right environments, you might find similar conditions, but that is I personally don't know the exact constitution and ingredients, so to say, of Martian soil. And if you find a similar thing here, but I think you could, like, that's the point of simulation. You could find something which maybe from the minerals or from the texture and so on would resembles a similar soil, so that you can start growing something there, but you would still do it inside. So you test it inside. The aspect to be tested is more being isolated, for example, so you have no access to anything outside, so you would only use things from the inside.
Are they also doing delays when they communicate?
Yes, that will be, well, let's put it this way. If that is part of the simulation, and given that you might want to simulate the isolation from Earth, then you would simulate the delay as well. And that's a very good question, by the way. So if you send a message from your space habitat, if it's not a life-threatening situation, obviously that would be a panic button or something like that. Or the observer would decide that if there's a control room observing. but otherwise you would have you can add a delay in the communication as well very easily.
Yeah.
You just have to go between Canada and Australia. You get the delay.
I think the delay between Earth and the Moon and Earth and even Mars, it's a lot greater than
Yeah, it is.
between us.
Of course. Yeah, yes, of course.
Okay, so we are already going into my next question, what the relevance is of those missions.
Yeah, I think that's quite easy to deduct from what I've said already earlier. It would be very expensive. Imagine you have a new system, okay, and a new aspect of a system. You have built a new interface, a new plugin, and you want to test if that plugin works under certain conditions in vacuum or with a certain radiation in your environment. And now you would send it just to test it. You send it into orbit, which needs a rocket, need to launch it from a certain launch pad, and so on. It would get quite expensive. So obviously you try. So from all the missions which has been done before, you have enough information of what the conditions are in the environment. So instead of send something up, you would actually build a similar environment or similar environments if you want to test aspects separated from each other. And then you test the conditions. And then for plug, let's say you have built a plugin or power plug or something like that, then you would try to test it in a sterile, high radiation, high temperature, low temperature changing environment in vacuum and something, as you would build a chamber for that, right? And that is way less expensive because if the first try doesn't work, then you get the data and then you can say, oh, this didn't work. We can change it slightly and now it does work. If you would do this with like always sending something into orbit, then you have to send like 2, 3, 4, 5 times before you get it. The other thing is also obviously if as soon as humans are involved, first of all, there's a lot of things we don't know yet, and a lot of things are not only psychological nature, but also how the body behaves in certain conditions. And obviously, if you don't know what happens and you can test it before, it would be very unethical to send humans straight away because, who knows what happens, right?
It's also dangerous. I mean, we're talking about space, right? I mean, if you,
That's what I mean. That yeah, would be a life-threatening situation for the person you are sending. You
yeah,
don't know what happens to that
and
person.
I mean, even if you say like, oh, okay, so it doesn't even have to be just the environment. I mean, also the equipment that you basically send with the team, right? So if you set up the habitat and you have like certain tools there, and suddenly someone on a regular basis gets a cut. I'm just, bringing one example up. Then obviously this tool might not be suitable for the mission because sure, if you get a cut and you're still on Earth in those simulations, then you can get like ambulance right away. It's a little bit harder if it's like on Mars, right? I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
calling
Yeah.
911 if you're on Mars might not get the
555 space.
555 space might not get the result that you desire, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's not only the environment itself, it's also the tools that you send up, right?
Yeah. I personally would put this as that's in the environment. So you're using the tools in the environment you have available. So
Right.
but I get your point. Yeah,
Yeah, I
of
was.
course. But that's parts of every system you would also test. So you can test that in simulated, as you said. Obviously, in a simulated area in an analog mission, you can still get the ambulance if it's really bad cut. Otherwise, and that would actually happen as well from the protocol. If it's not a life-threatening situation, you would rather, with all the delays and everything, which happens, you would then tell the people in the habitat how to deal with the situation. If let's say a medical professional would tell them, hey, that's a deep cut. Now you have to use from the medical kit. You have to use the suture set, or if that is not available, you have to do this and you have to do that.
Right.
Only if it gets to a certain point, the interference would go in. So you want to, for an analog mission, especially if you want to test, for example, aspects of long isolation, you really don't want to interfere with the test procedure. So
You get
oh,
that, yeah.
I've hit my toe. Please, can I get out? So no,
I get that. I
obviously,
get that.
yeah.
That that actually there's another interesting aspect. I mean, when those missions are designed, um, obviously, if it's like to the moon or the ISS, it might not be as severe. But first of all, I can imagine that every single person on those missions have a certain level of medical understanding. Let's put it this way: they're maybe not like a nurse or a doctor level, but at least um, closer than someone who has like no knowledge whatsoever. But
And
if it,
extended first aid training,
yeah, yeah,
I think. Yeah.
but I think if it is a mission to maybe even if you want to have like a habitat on the moon, you definitely want to have a doctor there, right?
100%, yes, 100%.
Just because it just takes like too long to actually get even an ambulance to the moon.
Imagine Saturn V with a blue light on it. Can you hear the sound of the ambulance in space, though?
No, you cannot. Sound's not traveling through space. That's that brings another very interesting question. If a tree falls in space, can you hear it? No. Okay.
Okay, we're digressing here.
Just a little bit. Um, so so um, so how many missions are they at the moment?
Oh, I don't know. I think I would say more than I can count, because there's always something in design stage, and as I already mentioned, if you just look at how big NASA alone is, I think they will have countless analog missions running. And then it depends also what you really put in under that framework
Yeah.
in analog mission. Even if you, in my personal view, if you test a spacecraft or a little CubeSat and you put it on a vibrating table or into a thermal chamber to test certain aspects of it, I personally would consider that an analog mission as well, to a degree. So,
Okay.
and if you put that, then there will be countless.
Countless missions.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for today. We keep it today was a little bit shorter,
Quick and dirty.
quick and dirty. I hope you had some fun and you learned a little bit. If you like the show, please leave a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And we would like to hear from you, so don't forget to leave a comment, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.
See ya.